back to this in terms of the primary tissue types of connective, epithelial, muscular, nervous. They have a common function. Okay. Now, one tissue that you may not think of as connective is blood. So the various blood cells is connective tissue. And it doesn't fall in these three groups of epithelial, which are those that line a surface. It doesn't fall in the group of muscular in terms of contraction, and it's certainly not nervous in terms of conducting an impulse, coordinating muscle contractions, things like that. So connective tissue is kind of that. Okay, we can't really categorize it in these three groups, so let's toss it in with connective. And in terms of organs, well, we'll see that organs have the various tissue types within them. So this is just a section through the stomach. We see the mucosa, which is epithelium. We see submucosa here, which is below it, underneath it. It's called sub. We have connective tissue, clearly blood vessels within, and nerves. And then we have muscles. And so we see those various tissues coming in to give rise to the organ. And then the stomach, of course, is within the digestive system, the organ system. Okay. In terms of anatomical terms, an axis is just a line. So when you think of a pencil like this, that's an axis. So if I had this and it goes like this, the axis is the dorsal-ventral axis. Okay? This is transverse. To get a plane, it's two axes together, and basically what you do is you basically have a piece of paper. So if I have this as the plane, right now if it goes right down the midline, this is called mid-sagittal. If it's off to the side, it's parasagittal. And what would be the two axes contained by this? And if you're not sure, you can always think of that as a piece of paper and run your hand along the outside perimeter. So in this case, what axis is this? Dorsal-ventral, what's this? So superior or inferior, maybe you might think anterior posterior, but this is different anterior posterior here. So probably superior inferior is a better idea for humans, okay? All right. This is a transverse section. What would be the two axes here? Transverse and dorsal ventral. So on the lab exam, I'll probably have some image like that just asks you, what are the two, what plane is this and what are the two axes? In terms of some other terms, superficial, that typically means on the surface, deep is buried within. Proximal and distal refers to kind of a reference point. So this is distal, this is proximal, because this is further away from here. Okay? Oral and aboral are terms we use for those organs that have radial symmetry. So they have a mouth part, which is the oral part, and the other part, the aboral. And we'll see this with the cnidarians next week, okay? And then this just shows you some of the planes that we have in a human. The sagittal that I discussed before, the midline mid, or the side para, there's that transverse and the frontal. In terms of terms, coelom is kind of a confusing term. So let's first look at a coelomate organism. And it's kind of not the best analogy, but if you ever have like a roll of toilet paper that has a paper wrapping on the outside, there's a surface there, you have the solid packing of the paper itself, and then you have the cardboard tube. But there's an opening within that tube. So if you look at that, it's kind of like this. We have the opening here within the tube, and this is solid packing. So the outside body wall versus this, typically it's called the gastrobacter cavity, there's solid packing there. If we have a true coelomate organism, there's a cavity within this. And that cavity is called a coelom. Okay? And do not confuse a coelom with things like oral cavity or pharyngeal cavity or things like that. Cavities can be open to the outside. A coelom is internal, okay? And organs project within this. There's this lining here. So a true coelomate organism has the coelom lined with mesodermally derived tissue called peritoneum, okay? And then this just illustrates from some organs we're going to be looking at. We'll look at the cnidarians, flatworms next week, and we see this tube. Within a tube, common body plan. The tube is the gastrogastric cavity or the GI tract in us, with two openings, mouth and anus. But this is a solid packing, so this is a coelomate. In a true coelomate organism, it's a cavity, a coelom, and it's lined, including this internal tube, is lined with that peritoneum. Pseudocoelomate, which is like the roundworms, this tissue does not go around this gastrocraft cavity. And the disadvantage of that, or conversely, the advantage of this, is you can have blood vessels, nervous tissues, things like that, lead to the GI tract and regulate it and take up nutrients from it. In this case, the nutrients have to diffuse outward through this pseudocoelom. Here, they have to diffuse outward through the solid packing here. And I do want to point out, even though these cells solid packing like this, there are spaces between the cells called interstitial. Fluid filled, okay? So some terms, gastrobacter cavity, there's one opening. You may call that opening a mouth or an anus because you have to expel waste from there and you have to obtain food into the gastrobacter cavity that way. GI tract has two openings, mouth and anus. You're clearly familiar with that. That's what we have. The advantage of this, specialization along the tract. Fragmentation in the mouth, stomach storage, fragmentation within small intestine, most of the absorption within small intestine, taking some nutrients, removal of water, large intestine, things like that. Closed, metamerism. This is maybe a little bit harder to think about, but it's repetition of structures. So when you think about a vertebral column, we have very many vertebrae, and that's repetition there. And this is a common theme through evolution. You evolve something, you repeat it, modify it slightly, okay? The arthropods will see they have lots of appendages. They duplicate those appendages, they modify them slightly. Specialization. Closed versus open circulatory system. Let's do closed first. You're familiar with that. We have a closed circulatory system. That means the fluid, blood in this case is the term we'll use. The blood is contained within vessels unless there's a break, but usually it's within the vessels. The way you get an open circulatory system is you smash your blood vessels so the blood leaks into the interstitial space, you get a bruise. Okay? But there are many organs that have an open system from the start. They can still have a pump. So don't mistake this to say, hey, because it's open, you can't have a pump. You can still have a pump, which creates a pressure, and there still can be vessels leading away from that pump and to the pump, but there are openings designed called sinuses. And what happens then is this fluid, which in this case is called hemolymph, not blood, but hemolymph, goes right next to all those cells. So the distance the nutrients, gases have to diffuse is minimal. So that's a good advantage. The disadvantage, so the plus is decreased distance for diffusion, which we'll see shortly is really a key thing. But the disadvantage is loss of pressure. And also loss of control. You can't regulate the flow to these sinuses very well because they're open. All right? So with things, always think about both the pluses and minuses of them, okay? And I may on the lab exam ask you to say, what do you think might be an advantage of this versus that? And that would be a conceptual question that you might have to think about. Okay? All right. Not quite sure what happened to the image there. But the key thing here is here, you do not have this slide. You have it in next week's, but I just want to bring it out here because it's kind of relevant here. We just talked about how the advantage here is that you have less distance to diffuse those nutrients into those cells. So rates of diffusion is proportional to a constant called K. It varies with the molecule you're talking about. So that can't be changed by evolution. That's designed by the molecule. CS is cross-section. So if I have a larger cross-section to do the diffusion across, basically more surface area, I'll get more diffusion. So that's one way to increase the rate. If I have a higher gradient, that's another way. So if I increase my gradient, I'll increase the rate of diffusion. Or if I decrease the distance that I have to diffuse those molecules. And a lot of times it really is about how can we maximize the rates of diffusion. Because usually diffusional limits are kind of an issue that is really of critical importance in terms of efficiency. So basically that just talks about that. And we'll go over that again next week. In terms of, I'll just, the formula again is rate is proportional to a constant times the cross-section times the concentration gradient times the length or distance that molecule has to diffuse. So if you want to make it faster, you make the distance you have to diffuse it less. Okay? So in fact, when we talk about a capillary, I'll just put this now to illustrate this. When we actually talk about a capillary and a red blood cell, that diameter of the capillary is almost the exact diameter of the red blood cell. So the distance to diffuse outward has been minimized. If the capillary is much larger like this, and you have that red blood cell like that, you have a lot larger distance to diffuse. Okay? So again, think about the distance. In terms of, we can see that kind of illustrated here. We effectively are tubes within tubes. And the reason for that is to decrease the distance. So we have an invagination that leads to the lungs, huge amount of surface area there within the lungs for gas exchange. So there's a large cross-sectional area. The distance between the alveoli, which is the part of the lung, and the capillary that surrounds it is minimal. We have a circulatory system that distributes nutrients throughout the body, the blood in our case, and it's filled with gases, nutrients, hormones, etc. An excretory system that interplays with the circulatory system. So basically it's filtering out the blood, removing waste products, maintaining osmotic balance, things like that. And then of course a reproductive system. And then this just illustrates this. We're typically that tube within the tube. So here's the GI tract, mouth, leading down here eventually to the anus. Can you still hear me okay? Yeah, great. And this term cloaca, people often ask that. It's a Latin term, and it stands for kind of, we have the bladder, so the excretory waste, urine. We have the intestines, so feces, etc. And the gametes released here as well. So the cloaca has both, it's both genital, urinary, in terms of the systems there. Okay, so why do we study the rat? The rat anatomy is going to be very similar to yours, with a few exceptions. They're small. We can get them easily. The rats should be pathogen-free. Now, I do want to point out, with the rats, once you dissect them, we're going to have you put them back, so I'll show you the dissection shortly. But at the end of lab, we would like you to put the rat in a bag like this. You're going to fold it over and then tape it with a couple pieces of tape. What we do is we donate these rats to an organization that feeds them to birds as part of a wildlife rehabilitation. So you're going to use dissecting pins to pin out the rat on the dissecting tray. Please make sure you put all the dissecting pins back into the sponge and do not leave them in the rat, because if you do, then when the wildlife feeds on these rats, it will damage the wildlife, okay? So I implore you to remove all the pins. So what we're trying to do is maximize the use of these rats. They would have to purchase rats no matter what to feed these animals. So all we do is we interject a teaching step within there, okay? All right? Also with the rats, they are, like I said, supposedly pathogen-free. The facilities we get them are highly monitored. These rats, about $20 per rat. If you went to the vivarium or some other place, you could get them for $2 or $3. Okay? So they should be pathogen-free, but nonetheless, we will have gloves available for you to wear when you do the dissection to protect yourself in case potentially they do have infections, things like that. Occasionally we do see infections, we do see tumors, various things like that. So if you see some abnormal feature, please point it out to other people so that the rest of your students can see it, okay? But you'll definitely, it's kind of interesting. And there's no computer program yet that I know of that suddenly interjects some disease state or some abnormal anatomical condition there, okay? And with the rats, please don't name them or mistreat them, okay? So any questions about the rats? Treat them with respect. We have gloves available for you to wear. I'll show you how to do the dissection. It's actually very quick dissection. Okay? In terms of organ systems, I'm not going to read this off. You're familiar with the various organ systems. If not, make sure you are. In terms of group work, you're going to do this as pairs. Now, if you're not real keen on doing dissections, hopefully your lab partner is. And if your lab partner isn't, then maybe split your lab pairing up so that you each get partnered to someone who's really keen on this, okay? We're not going to force you to do the dissection, okay? It is a very valuable learning experience. You will need to take lab exam too. We have lots of images. But again, if neither one of you want to do it, try to split it up so that you can be with some eager beaver, okay? All right? So any questions about that? And when you think about it, any of the cell requirements for a cell has to be met by an organism and additional ones, right? So you have to have gas exchange, you have nutrients, you have to have gene control, various things like that. So that's all true for the organ systems as well. In terms of the chordates, there's some features we can see that are representative of chordates. They have a dorsal hollow nerve cord sometime during development. Our nerve cord is dorsal, protected by the vertebral column, and also the brain, protected by the cranium. It is hollow, it is filled with fluid called cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF. So we have a dorsal hollow nerve cord. We have pharyngeal gill slits or clefts at some time during development. We don't have them now, but during development we did. We have a post-anal tail, so here's anus, so post-anal tail, and a notochord during development. We don't have much of the notochord left, some remnants between the vertebra, but at some time we had a lot more notochord. This just illustrates development here. There's the dorsal hollow nerve cord, there's the notochord. We'll talk a lot more about this in the reproductive and development lab. In terms of this, I would not ask you this question on the lab exam because I think it's just too much memorization per se. I know, what about all the other stuff? Because you spend a lot of time on looking at the classes and looking at the organisms, okay? So how many cells in the human body? Any idea? About 200 trillion? Number of cell types. There's not that many different cell types, maybe 200 cell types, maybe 300 at most. Number of bacterial cells located on the surface of the human. This is one thing that always bothers me. People will say you have more organisms, bacteria living in you than you have your own cells, and that's just wrong. Because they're not living within you, they're on your surface. So think about your GI tract. The inside of your stomach is outside your body. If you wanted to illustrate this and do not do this, you could get dental floss, take 50 feet, tie one end to your tooth, swallow, and in 3 days, the other end would be there. It's never crossed a cell membrane. Never crossed a cell membrane. So it's outside your body. So any bacteria along that dental floss are outside your body. When they're inside your body, what's attacking them? Your immune system, right? So if you had that many bacteria within you, you'd be dead. You'd be decomposing, okay? So they're on your surface, all right? Do not, students always say, can I do the dental floss for extra credit? No. How many want to be vets? Anyone want to be a vet? Okay, great. So vets have to deal with this quite often because people get kind of sloppy when they throw away the dental floss and the cat or the dog chews it and swallows it. And dental floss, when your GI tract is turning through peristalsis net, the dental floss can just literally cut open the GI tract. If you make cookies, sometimes they'll say, you want to make nice clean cuts? Take dental floss and just wrap it around it and make a nice thin cut. Great for cutting. So the same thing will happen to the GI tract. So do not try the dental floss routine, okay? Not a good thing. Various things like this. Huge length of blood vessels in humans. Surface area here of the lungs, 100 meters squared. Huge surface area. Why? Gas exchange. Question. What was the question to the length of blood vessels? This one? It was 20,000 trillion. That's why they say you have more bacteria living in you than your own cells, but they're not living in you. They're on your surface, okay? So I want to change this answer here. You don't have this. 5, what's the total length of DNA? People do things like circumference of the Earth, moon and back. None of those really relevant. So I switched to VLSP to Pimentel. because you all walk that. So how, if you took all the DNA in your cells and uncompacted the histones, just had them be the normal length, not compacted through histones in that, how many times could you walk back and forth between VLSP and pimentel? Any idea? 10? I think it's 400 million times. Huge number. Because each cell has about, what, a couple meters of DNA, and you have how many cells? So anyway, so much for the fun facts. On to the science. X-ray system eliminates nitrogenous waste. So I think you're familiar with that. In fact, you know also that it does osmotic and water balance. So how many of you are winter skiers, cross-country in particular? So no cross-country skiers? A few. So a lot of times you have to watch in the winter when you're cross-country skiing, you can get dehydrated very quickly because it's kind of cold out, you're exercising, you're sweating a lot, the air's very dry, so you tend to lose a lot of moisture. So they say check the color of your urine. The more yellow it is, the more dehydrated you are. That's just reflecting your osmotic balance. So your X-ray system is not just to get rid of nitrogenous waste, but it's to regulate your osmotic balance, okay? And the difference between an osmoconformer versus an osmoregulator, osmoconformers conform their osmolarity to the external environment. So I'm going to show you a graph of this. This will make more sense here. So this is an osmoconformer. They match the overall tonicity of the outside environment, okay? And terms like hyper and hypo, we did this before, but remember it's all relative. If A is hypertonic to B, B is hypotonic to A. It's all relative, so it just depends how you're doing the comparison, okay? So in terms of osmoconformers, they match the overall tonicity of the external environment. That does not mean they have the same osmotic concentration for everything. Sodium can be different, chloride can be different, various ions can be different. The overall tonicity is the same, so they don't have to expend energy to do that. But a strict regulator, an osmoregulator, would have to expend energy to maintain that osmotic balance, okay? And of course, clearly specific ion balance. So in terms of nitrogenous waste, they're coming from the amino acids from protein digestion. They're coming from the nucleic acids digestion. We can, if we're aquatic, typically have the nitrogenous waste be in the form of ammonia because the external environment can dilute it away. Ammonia is very toxic, so you have very low levels within the organism because it's just too toxic. But if you have the external environment to dilute it, no problem, dump the ammonia there, okay? Also, if you're in an aquatic environment, usually you can deal with taking up that water from the external environment to make copious amounts of urine if necessary. Things like ourselves, mammals, some amphibians, etc., they form urea, so it's a few more steps to do that, so it's a little bit more costly, but urea is not nearly as toxic as ammonia, so you can have high concentrations of it, so you need to have less water loss when you urinate to get rid of that urea. And uric acid is even better yet. There's a lot more nitrogen groups in here, and it's water insoluble. So uric acid is basically crystalline, precipitates out of water. So when you see bird droppings, the white color is the uric acid. Okay? And the reason why that's important for birds is because they fly, they don't want to have the extra weight of carrying around urea, and then this conserves the water for them, okay? A lot more steps, so it's more expensive, but conservation of water. In terms of next week, when we look at flatworms, the polyhelminthes, we'll look at one group, the Terbellarians, and we'll see they have a structure like this called the protonephridia. And basically what it is, it's a cell like this with a tube. And once the fluid is inside this tube, it is effectively outside the body, okay? The same is true for humans in many ways, although we do have sphincters that close things off. In terms of bladder infections, women tend to get a lot more urinary bladder infections than men, and that's because the length of urea is longer in men than women because of the penis. Also, if the bladder infection gets bad enough, then those bacteria can go up the ureter and then infect the kidney, and that's really bad, okay? So that's open to the outside, all right? So truth is here, once something enters this tube, it's outside the body, and the key concept here is you selectively take things up from that solution that you want, or selectively excrete into the things you don't want, okay? And we'll see that over and over with systems. Here just illustrates this, and once the fluid's in the tube, it goes to this opening in the body wall, and then you release it. And this is mostly for osmotic balance here, because these tend to be in aquatic environments, so the ammonia can just diffuse across the surface. So it's mostly osmotic balance. In terms of the earthworms, we'll see structures called meninophidia. They have an opening here within the coelom here, so there's a large coelom here. So this fluid is called coelomic fluid. So the coelomic fluid gets pulled in here, and as it goes through this tube, things get selectively taken up or excreted into. Those things that get excreted into will pass outside this opening in the nephridial pore. So those things that are taken up then get picked up by a capillary bed, and then they re-enter, in this case, a closed circulatory system, okay? And things like the insects that we'll look at, they have these structures called malpighian tubules. They take up coelomic fluid. Once it's in this tube, it's effectively, again, outside the body. They excrete things into it or take up from that. And then in this case, they actually release these waste into their digestive system here, and then they defecate out the waste. Okay? And it would be from the uric acid to conserve water. In terms of kidneys, you've probably seen this before. We have structures like this. We have a artery here that approaches. We have various structures here called nephrons. Here's a close-up of this. So what we have here is the fluid enters this tube. It actually enters under high pressure, like almost like a coffee filter. This is very fine pores in it that cells, proteins can't go through. Once that fluid's inside this tube, things are selectively taken up or excreted into it. As it passes through this tube, eventually the waste will go into a collecting duct and then lead to the ureter and then to the bladder and then out the urethra. Okay? We won't have time to look at these things, but I know you guys sometimes spend a lot of time on YouTube on that. You can look at various things on YouTube, various things about like kidney stones and that, stones in the ureter, so you can see that it's open to the outside environment because you can just take a camera right up the urethra, etc., and look at that. Reproductive system. I'm going to go over the structures now. Functions more at the last lab because this is the week you have the actual rats to look at the male and female organs. We won't have them again then. So when we do the lab, you'll look at slides of the various, ovaries and testes, etc. But for this week, focus on the gross anatomy, okay? So reproductive system, they produce gametes, of course. They house and support development embryos. Hormone production, terms like testosterone, things like that. Okay. Here it just shows you, here's the kidney here. Here's the ureter that leads from the kidney to the bladder.